Hello and welcome. My name's Tom and you're watching I Like Motorbikes. We've got some really exciting projects coming up over the next 6 months, so keep watching out for those. Today we're going to be testing and reviewing the Sinnis Apache SM125. SM stands for supermoto, and supermotos have their history back in the 60s and 70s. These are bikes that were modified to go on hard-packed dirt courses, so they had motocross jumps and even tarmac thrown in for good measure. So because of that, they needed to be the best of both worlds, good on-road and good off-road. So that meant they had to have 17-inch wheels, they had to have high ground clearance, they had to have long travel suspension. And typically, the sort of bikes they were using were modified Honda CRs, or you have Yamaha YZs, that sort of thing. So with Sinnis choosing to have SM in their name of their bike, let's see if they've managed to capture the ethos. They've certainly managed to capture the off-road styling. It's got a high front mudguard, it's got long travel suspension, it's got good ground clearance, it's even got a bash guard fitted. But that's about where the similarities end. I mean, you can't expect much punch from a single cylinder 125. This one's supposedly 11.5 horsepower, but it does the job. But where it really lets itself down is the gearing. It's just too low geared. You know, for blasting around back lanes, it's good, you can get on the throttle in any gear and it pulls through it. But if you're going to be going on a dual carriageway, you're really limited to about 60 miles an hour, which is just too slow really. I mean, for example, you can put it in 5th gear at 30 miles an hour, even 25 miles an hour, and it'll pull cleanly, it doesn't bog down. So to me, that shows that it's too low geared. Well, the bike's got some great features. I mean, the mirrors, they're quite a cool shape and they don't end up blocking the vision from behind you. The dash is quite good. It's quite a nice bright light, it's even got a gear indicator and a fuel light on there. The rear light's really bright, great for safety, and as we're heading into winter, you want to be seen. The gear lever and the brake lever, they're both folding up, which is great if you end up in a crash. Now, if you're 17 and you're going to be pushing it a little bit with your mates, you're probably going to crash. Now the engine, it might be 1980s technology, but it's Suzuki GS125 derived. That means it's going to be rugged, reliable, dependable. It's what you want. Now they've also coupled it with a Delphi fuel injection system as well, which means that it's even more reliable. That's perfect, it's what you need. I've been riding this bike down near Land's End in Cornwall, so we're getting loads of wind coming in off the sea. I'm going down all the little windy narrow roads, and this bike's great for that really. You know, wind protection wise, you're pretty exposed with it being a supermoto style, but you don't notice it. Any crosswinds, I haven't had any issues, even though we've had 15-mile-an-hour winds hitting us. It's been not an issue at all. The engine, the throttle response, with it being fuel injected, it's actually really crisp and clean. It picks up nicely, there's no sort of dead points in the throttle at all. It works really well. And with the wide bars, throwing it round the corners, oh, really easy. It's a great fun bike to blast around these little lanes with. Some of the bad points, it's got linked brakes, which is a bit of an odd one. They were fitted to things like Honda Blackbirds or Honda VFR 800, so big touring bikes. Now what that means is, when you press the rear brake, it applies the front brake slightly, and vice versa. When you press the front brake, it applies the rear brake slightly. But one of the weirdest things is, if you're pressing the rear brake and you're turning on say a gravel car park, or perhaps, you know, a low friction surface like a grassy campsite, when you press that rear brake, it makes the front end dive. Now, even I've been nearly caught out a couple of times with it. It's just not a nice feeling. I think someone will very easily lose the front on that, and if it was me, I'd de-link the brakes as soon as possible. The bike is also quite vibey, so you can feel the vibes through the front, through the handle grips. You can feel it through the pegs. It's not very nice. It's a bit buzzy, for want of a better term. As well, I'm going to mention the gearing again. The gearing is just too low. Real world, you're doing an indicated 60 to 65, which is probably about 55 miles an hour. You know, it's just not fast enough really, especially not compared to sort of like the Japanese rivals that are water-cooled engines. They're just that bit faster, and really, that's all you're going to be caring about, is how fast are you compared to your mates. The underseat storage is pretty limited. It's just a little canister on the left-hand side of the bike, underneath the rear plastic, so you can't actually take the seat off. It's just a little tool tube, effectively. As well, depreciation on these bikes, because it's a Chinese bike, albeit one of the better brands, you're probably looking at, in 2 years' time, it's going to be down to £800 up to £1,200 maximum if you really look after it. What I've also noticed on this bike is it's brand new. It's only 1,000 miles old, or I got it when it was just over 1,000 miles, and there's already fasteners on it that are going rusty, and it's not just one or two, there's a few places here and there, so it's certainly not built like some of the other bikes are. You know, you're talking your Yamaha, Suzuki's, Hondas. It's just something to be aware of. So what's this bike like to ride? Well, let's start with the tyres. The tyres are Timson Not a brand I know or would trust, but everything I've thrown at them, they've managed to cope with it, be it wet riding, you know, blasting down back lanes, etc. They've never showed any signs of slipping out or doing anything untoward. Suspension, a little bit on the soft side, but most 125s I've ridden are. I mean, if you start really pushing it around the bends, you can notice it, but if you're a new rider, you're not going to know any different, it's fine. Seating position sits you up nice and high. You know, you can see around you, it's great. Clutch action's really light, the brakes are good, like I said before, nothing to worry about there. Seat's quite comfortable, you know, it's not going to be a long range bike really. You can probably do it, I've done some silly things like that before, but you're probably going to be at your limit at about an hour, I would imagine. Foot pegs, there's something good to know. It's got a nice and chunky base, loads of grip for you, so even if you get muddy boots or anything, you're still going to have grip, it's fine. The rear pillion grab rails, you're not really going to be using them, I don't think, especially if you're on a learner license. The pillion foot pegs as well, they're completely pointless. No point in them being there unless you're going to be strapping luggage to them. Let's talk about Sinnis. Who are they? Well, they say they're a British brand, but they're obviously selling bikes that are manufactured in China. Now I challenge them, if that's what they're doing, how can they call themselves a British brand? This is what they came back to me with. Direct from our Brighton, UK headquarters, we ensure quality craftsmanship by subjecting bikes to strict criteria at every stage of the manufacturing process. Our Brighton-based design team works alongside engineering specialists to bring their concepts into optimum form. I don't really know what that means either. I would guess that it means that they've been working with manufacturers in China, making them adhere to stricter quality controls, you know, putting processes in place and giving them design feedback based on their experience with the bikes. Sinnis have a range of bikes. It covers everything from adventure bikes to cruisers, or we've got supermotos, everything in between. Now, they're predominantly lower cc, the biggest in their range is 380cc, but they're mainly 125s, 50cc's, basically aimed at having cool bikes that new riders want to be on the road with. This bike we've got here is just £2,249, comes with a 2-year warranty, and that warranty they've said that things like your general wear and tear items, brake pads, chain and sprockets, they're not included, but anything else that is outside of the normal wear and tear is included. Now, I spoke to them and I also asked, they've only got 100 dealers covering the whole of the UK, so if I don't have a dealer near me that services Sinnis bikes, will I invalidate the warranty by going elsewhere? They've said no, all you have to do is send in the service slip that you get done by a registered motorcycle repair place, and that won't invalidate your warranty. If you don't do that, then it might. Now, for 2 years trouble-free motoring, and if you want a supermoto style bike, there aren't many options out there, but a few of the competitors you're going to be looking at are KTM Duke. It's at 3,499. Now, not strictly a supermoto, but it's similar sort of styling. Got a cool trellis frame, really in-your-face styling, quite a cool bike, but pretty expensive. You've got the Pulse Adrenaline, that's only £19.99, just a shade under £2,000, but really hasn't changed much for a few years. I don't know much about it, but it's certainly got its place in the market. You've also got the Sinnis Apache SM125, it's £2,349, it's just £100 more than this one, but you get a different chassis, it's got a different swinging arm, it's got a dual underseat exhaust and a different dash. Same engine and technology, but just a few little quirks there. We've got the SWM RS125. Now that's more of a proper supermoto, it's a Spanish brand, it's based on an enduro bike, it's got a water-cooled engine, but I don't think you can buy them new anymore. I've got one in a dealer near me as a used bike and it's £3,499, second hand, so a lot more expensive than this Sinnis. So in summary, this bike is a great idea. If you're going to be going through the city centre or ripping it around little country roads, it's a great bike, but it's a bit like getting a recipe for your Grand's chocolate brownies and instead deciding to make it with salt. It looks the part, but it's going to leave a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. Now, if it were me and my money at 17 and I wanted a supermoto bike, I'd really consider the Sinnis. But I'd probably be looking at its bigger brother, the Sinnis Apache SM125, for just £100 more.